Hi everyone. Hi. What's up? My name is Makar, Naguib, for all of our visitors who don't know me. I grew up in this community since I was a little kid. So happy to be among you. And
Can you give us a little bit about your studies background?
sure, that's the man in charge over there, in addition to Abdullah, the man in charge. So I grew up here in this community. I'm 34 years old. I work in finance, and that's like my main job, but also for a number of like really good personal reasons, which I can talk about later, I decided to also study marriage and family therapy part-time. And so I just completed my master's after my second master's in marriage and family therapy this past December. And that meant I had to see a lot of clients and couples and families, and I'm so passionate about working with people and relationships, and I love that so much. And part of what motivated me to do that was because I wanted to not make mistakes when I was starting this process myself. I wanted to break generational patterns, and the only way to do that is to learn stuff, and you gotta work really, really hard. So. Does that answer the question? All right. Also, we want to welcome, I know Abuna did this already, but I personally want to welcome St. John's University Orthodox Theology class. Thank you guys for being here. Really happy that you're among us. Just so you know, I talk a lot, and but this is not like a one-way thing, so you just raise your hand, you say something. All input is very valuable and helpful. And if you have a question, I am 1,000,000,000% sure that everyone else has the same question. The last thing I want to say before Abuna tells us the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is that I'm extremely tired, so really sorry about that, but I woke up at 4:30 this morning to prepare for this and other things, so if I fall asleep while I'm talking, just wake me up.
In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen.
All right, so we're going to talk about the beauty of singleness. The beauty of singleness. Bam! Singleness. So, my goal in this discussion, before I tell you what my goal is in this discussion, I want to tell you what my goal is not. I want to tell you what my goal is not. My goal in this discussion is not to tell you to start or end a particular relationship. For just about all of you here, I have no idea what your relationship situation is. And so I don't know. So I can't tell you that. It wouldn't be fair to tell you to start or end a particular relationship. Also, it is not my goal to tell you that singlehood is better than marriage, or that marriage is better than singlehood. Actually, both are equally glorious in the eyes of God. Both singlehood and marriage are equally glorious in the eyes of God. However, with each of these stages, you gain something and you lose something. I want to tell you personally, by God's great grace and by a lot of hard work, I am very happily married. And I'm blessed to be married. But there are things that I miss about my singlehood that I'm never going to get back, right? And that's really important, right? Because with any stage in life, and especially, in the generation that you're in, even up to my generation, which is we're not that far apart. But we go through all these stages and milestones in life, right? And with every milestone in life, you lose something and you gain something, right? Like imagine a husband and wife, have kids. When they have kids, they're going to lose a lot of time and sleep and freedom. They're going to lose a lot of stuff, right? All of a sudden, they're going to have to be taking care of this kid that's spinning everywhere and whining and not sleeping and crying in the middle of the night. They lose a lot of comfort. So as you go through stages in life, you are always, are you ready for this? I'm going to say a big word. You're always grieving something. You're always grieving something. Imagine what it was like to start going to college. You grieve the loss of all that support that you have and all that structure. Before, you used to have like periods 1 through 7, 1 through 9, whatever it was, every single day. There's there's teachers everywhere monitoring you in the halls and all that stuff. So much structure. You get to college, like it's like nobody cares about you anymore. You know, like what happened? Like what about my future? What about debt? What about finances? What about my commute? What about what's next? What about my guidance counselor? What do I study? Where are the notes? So much. So you lose so much. So my goal though is to help you ensure that you get the most out of singlehood. That you get the most out of singlehood. Or another way of saying singlehood is the period when you're not in a serious or exclusive relationship. I'm not saying to get in or out of relationship. I'm not saying singlehood or marriage are better than the other. I'm saying I just want you, if you're single, I want you to like get the most out of that stage, right? Because that stage is so important, and we're going to talk about what that means. Both periods of life have amazing features and can be amazing journeys when done in a healthy way. By the same token, both of those stages can be disastrous for your life. Both of those stages can be disastrous for your life. I think that it's actually very easy for us, but if anybody doesn't think it's easy, just tell me. But I think it's easy for us to see how an unhealthy marriage or an unhealthy relationship can be disastrous. But it's a little hard for us to see how can singlehood be disastrous? How can I mess up my singlehood, right? Like I got this stage, you know, you're always in that stage until you get into a serious relationship, but you're in this stage. How can singlehood be disastrous? And please remember the following statement. This is going to be like a working definition or a statement for how singlehood can be disastrous. Singlehood can be a disaster if you miss all the benefit, growth, and experiences that God intends for you, which include all the things you need to have in order to transition into a serious relationship. Should I say that again? You guys with me or what? You guys, what's going on? I'm trying to, I'm tired, so I'm having a hard time sensing if people are tired with me. So, singlehood can be a disaster if you miss all the benefit and growth and experiences that God intends for you, which includes all the things you need to have in order to transition into a healthy relationship, okay? Another way of thinking about this, listen to this quote, is that there is no such thing as marriage problems. It's single people problems that they brought into marriage. There's no such thing as marriage problems. It's single people problems that they brought into marriage. And when I'm sitting with a couple and I'm talking with them, so much of what's going on is coming from when they were not in a relationship. Bam, right? Isn't that crazy? That the answer to so much of what's happening in my relationship goes back to when I was 5, 6, 7, 13, 20, whatever happened, right? Guys, I hear this every single day. I'm not exaggerating. Every single day, right? So the point is that even if I'm struggling in my relationship, it's because actually I didn't resolve a struggle in my single life, right? And so that's why singlehood is so important. And we have to honor this period. And we have to honor this period. Any questions so far? Any questions? All right, you guys with me? You get some eye contact? Okay, good. All right, so what are some of the forces that are preventing us from enjoying singlehood? What are some of the forces that are preventing us from enjoying our singlehood? I want to talk about three forces, okay? Three forces. The first one, and this applies to even if you're not Egyptian, we're in Queens, so like it's a very diverse, environment here, right? Is our ethnic culture. Our ethnic culture, not the American culture, that's the second one. Our ethnic culture, right? In so many of our ethnic backgrounds, we come from what's called a collectivistic culture. I just was talking about this a few weeks ago. I didn't expect to say that word for another few months, but I'm saying it again. A collectivistic culture, where it is so ingrained, and please guys pay attention to this, it's a little like anthropological and sociological here, but just pay attention to this point, that in our collectivistic cultures, you needed to get married and continue family to survive, right? And even many parts, just using Egypt as an example, in many parts, Like, you get married and you live with the in-laws, right? And then you just keep living, and they build more on top of the houses, and in top of the building, they add another floor, and you find buildings still under construction because they're always adding more families into the same building. So for many of our ethnic backgrounds, being married and being like continuing biological family was survival, right? And you have people working, like you have the kids working, right? And they're bringing in money, right? And you don't trust anybody. And actually, a lot of times, and this is not in so many ethnic backgrounds, a lot of times you would even feel safer keeping, marriages in the family, like cousins get married. And this is all real, right? This is all in our pasts, right? The challenge is now, this is in our culture, but the times have changed. So you find so many people saying, like, you find all this pressure to get married from your ethnic culture, and then you're like, wait, like, I don't need anybody. Like, I'm good, bro. Like, I don't need anything, I don't need to get married, right? But you get all this pressure. Why aren't you married? What's next? Blah, blah, blah. And I haven't even spoken about the American culture yet, right? That's coming next, right? So you get all this culturally driven encouragement to get married soon, like, hurry up, figure this out, what's going on, And it's so sad that our ethnic culture can push us into doing something that's harmful to us. Like sometimes, because you see your ethnic culture is tied to your support system a lot of times, right? So your own support system, because of the brokenness in the ethnic background, could be leading you to do something that's not good, right? The second force is our local or American or Western culture, right? But this is for a different reason, right? In our Western culture, our Western or American culture idolizes being in a relationship, or it idolizes the process of getting into a relationship, right? And there is so much going on, not just around being in a relationship, but also around the process of getting into one. Think of like when you're in school and how everybody giggles all the time by who likes who, right? Like just being engaged in that process is something that's idolized, There's so much fantasy around it. So many people are excited about it. You need to, like in other words, I don't know if you guys know what the word pipeline means, but you always have to have something in the pipeline, all the time. Who likes who texted you, who poked you, who whatever, who snapped whatever you, sorry, I'm not into the Snapchat thing. So that's a different generation. So, but you always gotta have something in the pipeline in this culture, right? Actually, it's almost weird to not have anything going on, right? It's weird to not have anything going on. Like you have to say, and just listen to this statement, how normal it sounds, but then we're gonna think about it again. Like you have to say, I'm just focusing on myself right now. Right? If you're not in a relationship, I'm just focusing on myself right now. But think about the word just. I'm just focusing on myself right now. As if it's lower than not focusing on yourself. So imagine somebody confidently and comfortably saying, I'm not really interested in being in a relationship right now. That's even hard to imagine someone saying that, because usually when people say that, we're used to them saying it after they've come out of a painful experience. We're used to them coming out of a painful experience, and then they're like, I'm not really comfortable, or I'm just focusing on myself right now. This is our culture, right? The third force, are you guys with me? Two forces, ethnic culture and American culture, okay? The third force is our own desires. And I want to break that up into three pieces, our own desires. The first piece is our own desires that's triggered by our culture, which we were just talking about, right? But our own desire here is we have a desire to fit in, which is a normal desire, because fitting in is like a proxy for safety, right? Like when you fit in to a group of people, you feel safe because you're with a group of people, right? So we have this desire that wants us to fit in. That's the first trigger of our culture. The other desire is triggered by our emotions, and this is where I want to introduce to you a really important concept called receptive desire, right? This concept, by the way, is very important when it comes to sexual intimacy, but it's not the point of today. We'll talk a little bit about it, but it's not the point of it today. So, has anybody here ever gone to a restaurant with a friend, and you're like, nah, bro, I'm not hungry. I don't want to eat. I'm good. I already ate, right? And then they're like, okay, fine, you don't have to eat. You just get like a water or whatever, right? And then their food comes out and you start to smell it, right? And then you're like, can I have some of those fries? Or let's call the server over again, right? So that's what receptive desire is. Receptive desire is like, it's desire that's triggered by exposure, right? By exposure, right? And think about what's happening to us in our society all the time. We're just exposed. Like, what movie doesn't have a relationship in it? What movie doesn't have a relationship in it? When are we not talking about relationships? Like, it's all the time. It's surrounding us all the time. So that's the first thing, right? So that we want something because we just we're like, it's like our culture is saturated by it, right? Which is everywhere. Relationships all the time. Like, focusing on yourself, which is what we'll talk about later, is not elevated and honored, right? We have the other emotion is that we have this feeling, and I hear this from people sometimes, and they say it with such yearning. I want to be loved by someone. I've heard that so many times. Like I want to be loved by someone. And they mean it in a romantic way, right? Whenever I'm sitting with someone and they say, I want to be loved by someone with such a strong yearning, I know that there's a hole in that person's heart that's not going to be filled by any romantic relationship. Like, whenever somebody says that, I know. And this is a very incomplete way of thinking because of how relationships are shown to us in our culture. A good rule of life, and please listen to this, a good rule of life is that desire does not always equal need. Desire does not always equal need. And this is where the verse in Jeremiah comes in, which I think many of us have heard before, that the heart is deceitful. Just because you desire something doesn't mean you need that thing, right? And we have to be careful because our emotions are triggered. We have all this cultural influence. We got all this stuff going on, and then we desire something. But desire does not equal need. Sometimes we feel lonely, and of course, in this world, in our culture, when you feel lonely, you go to a romantic relationship. That's one of the easy ones, one of the go-to options, right? But that's not the only answer, and it's not always the right answer. And the last desire, it's triggered by our sexual desires, right? And because we don't talk about sex a lot as much as we should in church, I want to just say my standard statements about sex and sexual desires because I think it's an important perspective to have good perspective. The ability to have sexual desires, is not bad at all. The ability to have sexual is not bad at all. Actually, God invented that. God created your ability to have sexual desires, right? At the same time, not every sexual desire is from God, right? So the ability to have sexual desires was created by God, but not every sexual desire is from God, right? You guys get what I'm saying? You guys with me? All right. Sex was designed to be experienced in a fully committed relationship, which means that this desire is always pointing to someone else, right? So we have these sexual desires, right, that sometimes are triggered by unhealthy ways. And they're always pointing to someone else, right? They're always pointing to someone else, right? So we're in this tough place, guys. And I'm not trying to solve this right now, right? I'm just acknowledging that this is why being single can be hard, or the forces that work against enjoying our singlehood. That we're in this tough place where you keep getting triggered all the time. You have these desires that are pointing to another person, but desire doesn't always equal need. And so you're just kind of in this tough place, right? Like, is this kind of sad? All right. Are you guys a little warm? Because I'm really warm. Right? Yeah, it's got a little warm. Okay. Maybe we'll I don't know who's in charge of the warm here. But. So the problem is that, the last point on this is that, the problem is that the sexual desire becomes conflated with being in a relationship. So we think of these things as being the same thing, right? Like I have desires and I want to be in a relationship because sex is pointing to someone else. So you conflate these two things and you think they're the same thing. All right. These forces lead us to feel like we're not fitting in, like we're missing out on something, like we're incomplete unless, and sometimes at risk of not surviving. All right, now we're about to get into the what are we going to do about it and how bad is this for us, right? Now I've just been setting this up, right, this whole time. So all of this stuff, that all of these forces lead us into making usually two bad decisions. And that's what I want us to start to work around, okay? The two bad decisions are rushing in and out of relationships or settling for a partner with whom a relationship would have a low likelihood of marital success, right? And this is what's really difficult. So rushing in and out, just coming in and out, which happens a lot, or settling for a relationship with someone with whom you have a low likelihood of marital success. I just want to remind you, my brothers and sisters, like this is, I'm not trying to be a downer here, like at all, but I want to tell you, like, marriage is wonderful, but it's so hard to make it work. And it's so easy to mess it up. Like, it is so easy to have a bad marriage. All you have to do is, like, nothing. That's it. That's how easy it is. Like, to have a bad marriage, you just do nothing. That's what it is. It's so easy to have a bad marriage. To have a good marriage, it is so much work. It's hard, right? You gotta work so hard, right? I very often, and just to give you some stats, like, no matter where you look, you're going to find at least 50%, right, of marriages ending in divorces, right? So, like, we're talking, everybody's all up in this process of the things that we believe lead to marriage, but then we already know, unless you do something very different, there's a 50 to 75% chance it's going to get messed up. Your marriage, the marriage, not the relation to dating, the marriage is going to get messed up, right? And that doesn't even account for people who are married, legally married, but emotionally divorced, right? Because we all know what that looks like, either in our own families or we've seen it in many ways, right? There are families, they're married, living in the same home, but they don't talk to each other. There's no marriage there, right? What is that? Who wants that? You better be single, right? I also talk to so many people who tell me that, and I may have said this to a different part of this group before, but it is so sad, especially when I see a newly married couple, but it doesn't even matter anymore, because it's always sad, when they say, did I make a mistake? Like, that is one of the most heartbreaking things to hear, when someone is saying, did I make a mistake, right? So, I'm not trying to tell you that, marriage is bad. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say there's a lot that goes into it. So if you make one of these two bad decisions, which is rushing in and out of relationships or settling for a relationship with someone with whom you have a low chance of marital success, then you're going to end up circumventing. Does everybody know what circumventing means? It's like going around, right? Some of the most formative experiences that you need to have in your life in order to reach your full potential as a human being. So if you make any one of these two bad decisions, which is rushing in and out of relationships or settling for someone, you're going to circumvent some of the most formative experiences that you're going to have in your life. The reason is because serious relationships have what I would like to call a settling effect. When you have a serious relationship, you kind of settle into it. And things start to slow down. And your focus all of a sudden shifts from 100% or 90% on yourself to all of a sudden, like, 50% of it goes to the other person. 50% of it goes to the relationship, right? So all these experiences that I'm going to start to list out to you that you're supposed to be enjoying and going through as a single person, you circumvent all of them. Years pass by, and you're like, whoa, what happened? Why is nothing working out? What's going on? Where did all the years go? I'm still where I started 5 or 6 years ago, right? And this happens, right? All right. Some of the formative experiences are making significant progress in the following things. Being in touch with yourself. What does that even mean, being in touch with yourself? It means articulating your own values. Like what is valuable to you? Just being able to say it, right? Applying your strengths and learning your weaknesses and blind spots. Understanding what all the inputs are to you. Like, who are the key players in your life who made you who you are? And what did they do as key players? And what influence did they have? Understanding your place in the world as a member of society and creating your own voice. You have to have your own voice. Another formative experience that's circumvented is learning what it is that you're looking to get out of a relationship. Also, experiencing failure and loss and success and gain. You miss those things, right? And also forming a clear understanding of what a healthy relationship looks like. If you're too busy being in a relationship or you haven't figured out what a healthy relationship looks like, you're not going to figure it out, you know? And lastly, building momentum in your relationship with God. All right, so I only have 2 more parts to this talk. Are you guys with me so far?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right, good. So, what should I do while I'm single? What should I do? Like, all right, fine, you're telling me singleness is great, but what do you want me to do while I'm single? How can I ensure that I'm getting the most out of my singlehood, right? By the way, I just want to remind everyone here, just in case you're in a relationship, like what I said at the beginning, I'm not telling you to exit your relationship. I'm just saying, whatever stage you're in, make sure you're getting the most out of it, right? All right. What should I do while I'm single? The first thing is, okay? And please, just, if you don't remember anything else, just remember this one statement, okay? Be laser focused. Be laser focused on your own development. Be laser focused on your own development. Be fully aware of what is happening with you and how well you're progressing and growing in life, right? And I don't mean that you should be like selfish or arrogant or self-centered. I'm just saying you have to be really aware of what's going on with you, right? Because the best people, the people who are ready for a relationship, are whole people. Those are the people, like they come into a relationship and I'm just watching and I'm like, man, this person, this guy or this girl, they're gonna do great. Because it doesn't even matter what happens in that relationship. They're gonna exit it if it's not healthy. They're gonna make it work if it's healthy. They're gonna grow if they need to grow, right? That's what whole people do, right? But if you're not focused on yourself, it's gonna lead to an unhealthy place. I wanna give you, what does it mean to be laser focused? I wanna give you, I'm gonna just list out quickly, right, 10 questions. I'm just gonna list them out, right, of things you need to gain clarity on while you're developing. I'm just gonna say them, but if you guys want me to slow down or repeat something, just say it. 10 questions, ready? You guys ready? 10 questions. What did my family teach me or not teach me, or model or not model for me about what healthy family and married life looks like? Question 1. 2, what are the most significant experiences, good and bad, that I've had in my life, and how have they shaped me? How good of a support system have I been able to establish around myself? And what role do I have in that same system, right? What do I want to do for a living, at least in the medium term? And what is my current financial situation? What is the real status of my relationship with God? And what place does He have in my day-to-day life? What things, if any, make me feel insecure and ashamed? How well do I know my emotional state at any given time? And how constructively do I express my emotions? How aware am I of my body and my health? Am I enslaved to anything? And lastly, number 10, what are the unspoken rules or expectations that I have about being in a relationship, being married, or being a sexual being? You see all these things that it's gold, right? You got to get through that stuff, right? That's amazing stuff. And that's a lot of work. To get through that stuff, what should I do while I'm being single? Is start working through all that. We got to focus on our own development. If any of these questions you're like, what, develop, what? Yeah, You got to lean into it, right? Because one thing I just realized, I just was able to articulate in a good way, is if you don't know, you're going to get taught. And the person who's going to teach you, or with the experience that's going to teach you, is not necessarily going to be the right one or a healthy one, right? So if you progress in life with big question marks about who you are, you're going to get told the answer, and it's going to be the wrong answer most of the time. And now you're going to spend another decade trying to unlearn that and figure out what the right answer is, you know? All right. I only have one more little thing to say about what are some of the things that I can enjoy about singleness, because there are so many amazing things that are there in singleness that you pretty much are going to lose when you get married. Or not 100%, but, you know, in some way. But do you guys have any questions or comments so far? I feel like I've been talking for a long time. Disagreements? Concerns? Yes?
Could you elaborate on what you meant by like getting told the wrong answer?
Yeah. You know, like, so I can give you, let me try 2 examples and then hopefully it will address the question. You know, there's a major challenge with couples, married couples, about their sexual intimacy. There's so much that was taught to them by the media, pornography, myths, like you're like at the grocery store and you see like this magazine. It says 10 ways to please your spouse or whatever, right? It's just like this stuff just available to you like that, right? If your starting point is just a blank slate and you're just like ready to take something in, it seems authoritative. It's published. There's an author and an editor, and someone's paying for it. There's a charge for that, right? So it gets in there. Then you get these couples, which I see all the time, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. One time I had a couple, 14 years married, hadn't had sex in 2 years, right? And I start to listen to them, and I'm like, man, the amount of stuff they have to unlearn, right? The amount of stuff they have to unlearn, right? What about the roles of a man and a woman? You know? Like, if you don't start to think about that, you know, someone's going to teach you something. You're just going to get it from someone, right? I remember one time I was in a bio class. I'm in a bio class, my first year of college. I'm sitting there as a pre-med student. I have nothing to do with medicine. But as a pre-med student, I'm sitting there in bio, and I'm in there's 300 people in the lecture hall. They're just there. And the professor comes out, and I'm like sitting in the back because I'm so intimidated by all things college. I'm a freshman. And the professor's all the way up there, some big guy. The slide is bigger than this wall, the PowerPoint presentation, because so many people. And he starts the lecture. He says, if anybody tells you that God exists and God created heaven and earth, they're a fool and a liar. He just said it, right? So, and I'm like some kid, you know, I'm 19, 18 years old, right? And if I don't have something in here, I'm going to get taught something, right? I got this authoritative person speaking with complete confidence with 7 more degrees than I have. And there's 300 people just nodding their heads, right? And I'm like, of course I'm going to get taught something, right? Of course I am, right? Things about your identity, things about how to handle conflict, things about communication skills, so many things, right? So the point is that everyone has advice. I remember, can I just tell you just one more? Because I think the stories kind of help a little bit to explain the point. I remember a close friend of mine, she was getting married, right? And, you know, at least in the Egyptian culture, but in every culture, people love to give advice, right? So someone goes up to her, and like some older woman, and says to her, listen, if your husband ever disrespects you, when he leaves the house, you lock the door and don't let him change the locks and don't let him back. Just said it, like that, like with complete confidence. Who knows the state of that woman's marriage? Like what is she even saying, right? And this young woman is about to get married. Like what? Like what happened? What is going on? That's poison, right? It's poison that someone is dropping into a relationship right? And you have to be ready to push back on that. Like, no way, you know? So, does that answer your question? Okay, thank you for that question. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Let me just go through this and then we'll be close to the end. What are some things that I can enjoy while I'm single? There are so many amazing things. And you may not appreciate these because you may not have seen the other side of being like married or being in an exclusive, like serious relationship. And anyone here, by the way, who's like in that stage, like the transition, they're starting to experience it, and you have to like start to prepare them for it, right? You have to start to prepare them because it could be a rude awakening otherwise. When you're single, you can make decisions and readjust very quickly. Like, you know, for me, I like to always tell like in a premarital course or something. For me, if somebody asked me to do something before I was married, I just look at my calendar and I'm like, yeah, I could do it. Now, I'd be like, all right, can I get back to you in a few days? I gotta check with my wife. And then I check with my wife, and she's gotta check with her work schedule. And then we gotta see, you know? And so it could take me like 10 days to tell someone I can make lunch in a week, you know? So that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but the decisions you make, the decision-making process slows down not by half because it's two people, no, like tenfold, right? And related to that is that you are free to grow and experience life at whatever pace you choose without creating risk for another person. You can travel, you can spend, you can learn whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. But once you're in an exclusive relationship, every decision you make, if you're going to have a healthy relationship, it's going to affect another person, at least one other person, right? So that is going to change. You also have a lot of time to focus on yourself without having to be present for someone else based on their availability. You're also free to meet whoever you want and date in a healthy way, right? Like dating is something you're free to do, right? Of course, you want to do it in a healthy way, and if you've addressed many of these questions or began to address them, you don't have to have 100%, maybe even 50%, but at least not all of them, you maybe cover like 30 to 50%, right? But you're free to do that, right? You also have, and the last thing is you have time to serve, you know? Like being able to serve God, you know, is a beautiful and amazing thing, you know, and it fills your life, and it's amazing, and you grow so much from it. You think you're doing something for someone else, but believe me, you don't even deserve to be serving, or I don't even deserve to be among you, you know, like to be among each other is something we don't deserve as Christians, right? We're together because of the love of God, right? We don't deserve this, right? Even fellowship is something that's a blessing that we don't deserve, right? So, but once you get married, or once you get into a really serious relationship and you gotta focus on it, no, like you gotta focus on that relationship and do it healthy because you're about to enter into a covenant with God, right? And when you enter into a covenant, that's a priority, right? That's above everything else, right? So I hope by now, to summarize, you see singleness as being an extremely important period of your life. Equally important as being in a serious relationship. You also see that it is very possible to completely miss all of the critical experiences that you need to have during this period. Also, you know that there are forces that interfere with your ability to experience singleness in a whole way. There's a lot working against a single person. It's hard to be single. It's not easy a lot of times, right? And that's not what God intended. I hope also that you have developed a view for some of the things that you're supposed to be doing and thinking through while you're single. And lastly, you appreciate what you have as a single person because some of those things are going to be swapped out with other things when you enter into a committed relationship. That was all I had for in terms of materials. Are there any questions or comments or concerns or anything you want me to be more specific about? Yes.
What can I do about my past? If my past or my growing up in a family that is affecting me, should I work on that before getting into a relationship? Or or what?
Yeah.
Or I have to seek therapy or what?
Yeah, it's a great question. I want to say two things. The first thing is, which is very important, is that God is not limited by your past. I want to say that. It's very important, right? It doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter what happened. Like if you had no parents, if you had a severe, significant, repeated abuse in any form, whatever it is, if you didn't know anything about God, that's even not a limitation because God is not limited by that. So please, like, have hope, right? Like if you're concerned about your past, have hope. The next thing is you have to be responsible, right? And you have to own it. Don't be a victim. Like even if you were a victim in some circumstances, but now you're standing here, don't be a victim. Don't say, oh, because that happened, I can't, or because this happened, I can't, right? No. Take responsibility, and then you have to start to become aware and list out what are some of the difficult things that happened in your past, right? And I strongly encourage you, as you would with even if you didn't have a past, you have to talk with someone and have a team of people who support you. Just tell them, hey, I'm concerned. You see, I got a phone call a few weeks ago from someone who's like, she's doing just fine in life. Like she's fine, But she had some questions about, she's seeing someone and she wanted to understand some things that she was thinking, right? And she's fine. I'm really glad we had that conversation because she was about to everything was about to explode. But she didn't, it wasn't complicated. So the point I'm trying to make is we have to focus on these things, don't suppress or ignore the past, and take it, identify and articulate what's going on, and take it to someone else and to hopefully multiple people who you can trust, right? You cannot go through life. You cannot have a healthy relationship on your own. That's it. Please stop this way of thinking. It's so bad, right? Some people, it takes them 20 years to figure out they need help. Come on, bro. I could have told you this stuff day minus 300, right? I could have told you this way before you got married, right? So don't try to go about relationships, a healthy relationship, on your own. You got to take this stuff. It's so good to be overly cautious or to err on the side of caution. To say, hey, someone told me I've never dated before. I don't know what I should do. Or hey, my parents did this. I don't know what I should do. It's never wrong to go to someone you trust and to get advice, And hopefully multiple people, hopefully 2 to 3 to 4 who you can trust. I hope that answers your question, Sam. Yeah. Are there any other questions? I have to wait 7 seconds so that it gets awkward. Okay. All right. Well, love you guys so much, and welcome again to St. John's University Orthodox Theology class. Glory be to God forever. Amen.